Former Republican Congressman Joe Walsh was once a proud ally of the right-wing Tea Party. He hated Barack Obama, obsessed over radical Islam, and endorsed Donald Trump in 2016. He's since become a never-Trump Republican, regretted a lot of his old offensive comments, and even voted for Joe Biden. He and I had many conversations when I was at MSNBC and agreed on a lot about the threat posed by Trump and MAGA. But where we disagree a lot is on Israel and Gaza. So this interview is in two parts. First, we're going to talk about what we agree on, the danger from Trump, and then in part two, on what we disagree on, the danger from Israel. Joe Walsh, who now writes The Social Contract on Substack, joins me now. Thank you, Joe, for coming on Mehdi Unfiltered.
Good to be with you, my friend.
Good to be with you in person here in DC.
Yeah.
We spoke many years remotely when I was at MSNBC. We're now back into a second Trump term. We are over 5 weeks into a second Trump term. Is it as bad as you thought it would be? Is it worse? What has stood out to you the most from the past month or so?
I think it's worse. I'm not surprised, but I think it's worse. Mehdi, what stood out to me is, not you and not me, how the Democrats seem to be caught flat-footed. He told us every single freaking day during that campaign what he was going to do. He told us every day during that campaign he was going to be a dictator, a king. And for him to win and then be sworn in, and the Democrats really don't know how to react to it, that's been mind-boggling to me.
One thing I don't think any of us, correct me if I'm wrong, even you, but certainly not me, quite anticipated is that this would be a co-dictatorship, that you would have President Trump and President Musk. It's almost crazy to think that 6 months ago, Musk had not even been on stage with Trump. Like, that's how quickly it all happened. He endorses him in the summer, turns up with him in October, and is now made a special government employee or whatever he is right now. You have been a close student of all things Trump for almost a decade. Is Musk working for Trump, or is Trump working for Musk?
I think Musk is working for himself and he's working for Trump. Mehdi, we're in a constitutional crisis.
Yep.
And it just pisses me off when people say we shouldn't say that yet, because he hasn't formally defied court orders yet. Bullcrap. We're supposed to have 3 independent branches of government. I worked in one. Congress isn't there. I don't think the American people realize that. We only have 2 independent branches of government right now. My former colleagues, Mehdi, they have pledged fealty to him. They don't give a flying you-know-what about the Constitution. A healthy Congress would have hauled Elon Musk's ass in front of them under oath 3 weeks ago and just said, what in God's name are you doing? Just tell us what you're doing.
But they roll over again and again. I mean, you and I spent many years discussing how Republicans in Congress roll over for Trump, but now they're rolling over for Donald Trump and Elon Musk. It's bizarre. The cult is extended to 2.
They roll over because, you know, politicians want to get reelected.
Well, he's threatening to pay for primaries against any Republican.
God, yeah. Now, Musk is not as popular with the base, I hear from them every day, as Trump is. Trump's hold on the base is ironclad, and it'll never let go. They fear Musk's money, because he will put money into primary challenges.
It's interesting you talk about Trump's grip on the base, and I agree with you on that as well. I remember when people were saying, Ron DeSantis will win the nomination. I said, no, he's not. Trump will defeat DeSantis. And people didn't believe us, but we were right. He has a grip on the base. There was a lot of talk about conservatives peeling away from Donald Trump, disappointed by the insurrection, not wanting to see a return to chaos. They would prefer a DeSantis. They might switch over to Harris. There was the whole talk of Nikki Haley Republicans, which I always thought was weird because Nikki Haley endorsed Trump. So you are a never-Trump Republican. Democrats spent a lot of time wooing never-Trump Republicans. Kamala Harris went on the campaign trail with Liz Cheney more than she did with Sean Fain or AOC or people on the left. It didn't work. Most conservatives stuck with Donald Trump. There was not some big shift. The Democrats lost. Was that a failed strategy that you were invested in?
It's a great question, Mehdi, and I think about it every day, because I was out there every day, Republicans for Harris, in a battleground state campaign for her.
Well-intentioned, right? I'm not questioning your intent. I'm just wondering, did you believe that these people are going to come over and we're going to defeat Trump in this way?
Yes, I thought more would. Now, some did. The way I look at it, Mehdi, is we were helping. Kamala had a cut on her arm, and we put a Band-Aid on that cut. She had an open gash on her leg with a tourniquet, and we didn't do anything about that. She definitely lost a lot of enthusiasm and support on her left flank as well.
But the left flank would say she spent far too much time with the Never Trump conservatives. Even Jen Psaki, who we both know, who is not a lefty, one of her first comments after the election, I remember on MSNBC, was like, maybe we spent too much time talking to Never Trump
Yeah,
conservatives.
but you know what pisses me off? And I was on Jen Psaki's show during the campaign, and she was applauding this effort. Okay. Oh, my God, look at this country first.
But it failed.
Right.
We agree it failed.
No, well, it did. She didn't get elected. I think there were bigger problems at play. I think we helped to a very small degree.
So how do you feel about the fact that Donald Trump in 2024, not only did he win more votes than he won in 2016 and 2020, but he also won the popular vote for the first time? This is a guy who was twice impeached, multiple felony convictions, incited insurrection in plain sight, found liable for sexual abuse. Like, this is not the 2016 apprentice Donald Trump. Let's give him a chance to go burn it down. We don't know much about him.
Right.
This is a decade in, and he gets more votes than ever before. What do you think about the American public? What do you think about the conservatives in America when you see that?
I blame the Democratic Party, and I blame Joe Biden. And by the way, Mehdi, the popular vote thing is freaking deceptive.
Yeah.
And I may be a rare conservative that would get rid of the Electoral
So would I.
College. Because a lot of Democrats in blue states just stayed home.
Yeah.
So the popular vote doesn't matter. That's deceptive. Look, Kamala Harris made mistakes. I think Joe Biden, I put the lion's share of blame on him. His bitter old ego kept him in way too long. But the Democratic Party, Mehdi, has problems. We're living in a populist moment.
Yep.
Average people are pissed off.
Yes.
On one side, they see a demagogue who's telling them brown and black people are a problem because they're eating your cats and dogs.
Yep.
On the other side, we have the Democrats who are just ignoring these issues. So they went with the lion demagogue over the party that they told me, Mehdi, every day wasn't listening to them.
He obviously is not interested in democracy himself, and there will come a time, as we discussed a moment ago, where he just completely ignores a major court ruling, says out loud, I dare you to stop me, which is what J.D. Vance in the past has encouraged him to do. What happens then, Joe? You're a former lawmaker. What happens to America? Should we be worried about political violence, civil war even?
Hell yes. And look, I think when it warms up, I think this summer is going to be violent. I think Americans are going to take to the streets. There's part of me that believes Trump wants Americans to take to the streets because Trump wants to use the military. But he will defy court orders in a very public way. And again, Congress won't do anything. So then what happens? Congress then can issue contempt orders on Trump. But then we're technically really in a constitutional crisis. And I think then, look, if the courts right now are overwhelmed, if we have a Congress that won't do squat, again, we need an opposition party, and I don't really see the opposition party. The American people are going to have to rise up.
The opposition party says, well, we don't have any leverage. This is what Hakeem Jeffries says out loud. We don't control the House. We don't control the Senate. We don't have a majority on the Supreme Court. What can we do, they say?
Yell and scream and keep Chuck Schumer away from a camera. I love Hakeem Jeffries, but again, Mehdi, they talk to us like Democrats talk to us like politicians. What was it, 3-4 weeks ago, 67 innocent people die in a plane crash in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump's immediate reaction, cut through the bullshit, was to blame brown and black air traffic controllers.
Yes.
And Democrats responded to that by, oh, it's too early. Oh, that's a little out there.
They're playing by old rules still, a decade in.
Completely.
He's appointing Dan Bongino to be deputy director of the FBI. And I don't hear much noise from Democrats about that.
No, and Dan Bongino 2 days ago said Trump should defy court orders.
He actually said they should set up a courtroom in the White House like Bane and Scarecrow in The Dark Knight, who, of course, were the villains of that movie. It's interesting that they're just openly saying we are villains.
I wish the Republican cavalry would be coming. They're not coming. I was Tea Party because of this. I feared concentration of power. For Tea Party, they sold out a long time ago. It's got to be.
There's not. Where are the libertarian Republicans who claim to care about the Constitution? Mike Lee is biggest toady out there. Where are these people who claim to care about the Constitution, the courts, separation of powers, small government, free speech? Where are they?
They're still in power. And if they did what I did, they wouldn't be in power. So there's your answer. The Libertarian Party has become MAGA. So this is why I jump on Democrats all the time, because they're the only shot we've got an opposition voice. But they're utterly out of touch, and you said it, they're playing by the old rules. Again, during the campaign, every time Trump speaks, he lies. But he goes everywhere to lie. The one criticism of Harris, Mehdi, was they tried to protect her. Play by the old rules. Get in front of the Washington Post. And screw that. Get in front of you. Go on the Joe Rogan show. Go everywhere.
But they need a communicator who can do that. I don't think she would have done a good job on the Joe Rogan show. The bigger issue is they didn't have a natural communicator. They need that next time round in 2028. It worries me, obviously, that you were so instantaneous to say hell yes when I said you worry about civil war. That's quite a big statement. Some people say that's hyperbole. It's alarmism. A lot of Americans, you go outside the studio, streets of DC, people just living their lives. They're walking around fine. They may not like Trump. They may think he's a buffoon. They might be slightly worried about some of the stuff he's doing. But most Americans are pretty complacent, I would argue.
The MAGA base, and I think your listeners need to hear this because I still engage with them every day, they're welcoming violence. Like they want the left and Democrats and ordinary people to say, this is crazy, let's take to the streets. Trump wants violence. MAGA wants violence. I just don't think the American people fully understand kind of this unprecedented moment we're in.
And of course, Trump remains pretty Teflon. We've seen his polling is bad. I hear people saying, look how bad his polling is. He's the most unpopular president at this point in his term, but doesn't stop him from having momentum, leverage, power. He survived so much. I mean, he literally is the Teflon politician of our time. I mean, he survived convictions. He survived rape accusations. He survived all sorts of things. The Russia stuff was big in term one. In some ways, I feel like it's coming back in term two. It didn't really work for Democrats in term one. Now look, I'm no fan of Donald Trump's support for Vladimir Putin and selling out the Ukrainian people. You wrote recently on your Substack that Donald Trump, quote, is a Russian asset. Your words, Russian asset. Yeah. Like I said, I'm not a fan of his love-ins with Putin. Clearly, there's something dodgy there. But Russian asset, isn't that the same kind of, some would say, over-the-top rhetoric, conspiratorial thinking that led Democrats and the hashtag resistance Twitter down a dead end during the first term? It didn't get anywhere, and Trump came out looking like the victim of a witch hunt.
This just pisses me off. We find out a day or two ago that there's going to be a book coming out in 4 months on the great cover-up, right? How on Joe Biden. No one's ever written the book about the great cover-up of Trump. Is he a Russian plant? Is he a Russian asset? How come we don't know that?
A lot of people hear you say those words, they just roll their eyes. Aren't you going to lose a lot of people with that kind of language?
Everything he's done and said for 10 years is exactly what Putin would want him to do and say. So give me another explanation. Don't just tell me he's a fanboy. But Mehdi, why hasn't anyone really looked into this?
People forget that the Mueller report was not a counterintelligence investigation.
No.
It was a criminal investigation.
Look, I just think the simplest answer is usually the best answer, and it's right in front of us. I've spoken to people in the know, as I know you have. And damn near everyone I've spoken to who is familiar with the intelligence has said to me privately, of course, Trump is compromised by Putin.
People would say he's too chaotic and too ignorant and too narcissistic and too impetuous to be any kind of asset, plant, Russian intelligence person.
Well, that's all true. But he also cares about money, and he couldn't go anywhere on the planet to get money for a long period of history.
His sons bragged about it.
His sons bragged about it, except for Russia. I just think right, Mehdi, so this is really, the question is, come on, how do you beat Trump? Let's talk about the price of eggs, because now he owns it, or do we keep talking about the rule of law and democracy? Yeah. You got to talk about both.
Okay.
I think.
All right, let's pivot a bit.
Okay.
You have been an outspoken opponent of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, going as far as to call it a genocide. But when it comes to Gaza, you've criticized people for calling Gaza a genocide. Why is that, Joe? Why is what's happening in Ukraine a genocide, but not what's happening in Gaza, when far more people have been killed and displaced in Gaza than in Ukraine? Did you like this video? Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel and turn on notifications. For exclusive content and to support our independent, unfiltered journalism, head over to Zeteo.com. Your support matters.